Welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. TikTok remains at risk of getting banned in 2025, but the Supreme Court is now stepping in, agreeing to weigh in on the case. We have more with my next guest, Dr. Dietrich von Biedenfeld from Houston Community College. So, do you think TikTok will be around, or will the Supreme Court rule against them?
Well, this is an expedited hearing, so we may not have a final judgment. We may just see a decision on whether to pause the access to TikTok in the present or whether to allow them to continue operations. I believe with 170 million users, the economic impact, and the conservative justices, despite their usual leanings, as many of them are President Trump appointees, they're probably going to allow it to continue because of the fiscal impacts and the First Amendment considerations.
Well, another consideration would also be President Trump did an about-face on this. Initially, he was against TikTok, and now he's for TikTok, saying it helped him get re-elected or get elected for a second term.
Absolutely. In his first term, he was unsuccessful in getting this banned. Under President Biden's watch, there was a bipartisan push to ban this unless there is U.S. ownership. There are national security concerns. We see a parallel in the Texas legislature as they move to ban Chinese entities from owning commercial interests, particularly those affiliated with the Communist Party. We've seen this against Iran and other foreign sort of terrorist organizations or other entities that are anti-democratic. But the reality is many people use this. These things could be considered, as were argued against Texas legislative access in 2023 against property rights for Chinese citizens, that these things could be considered racist, and that there isn't a national security concern beyond any of the other social media products that are out there.
Now, we've heard the owner of TikTok say time and time again that he is a citizen of Hong Kong. He doesn't live in China, and he's not beholden to China. What kind of influence could China have on this guy, even though he says, I'm not a resident of China and they don't have any influence, and I would not give them access to the records?
Well, beyond the extrajudicial influence that the United States, Russia, or China can influence with putting something in your tea or bothering a family member in a white van on a private jet to a non-disclosed location, the reality is that China does influence Hong Kong. After the British turnover, we've seen them continuously influence the governance and electorate of Hong Kong, and which is one of the reasons that you see Taiwan resisting so heavily Chinese influence over their territory. So the Chinese government has substantial influence over Hong Kong, its activities, its business ventures, and its governance.
There is a huge PR campaign going on right now, and I've been getting emails from publicists after publicists pitching and or PR firms pitching different stories on how the ban on TikTok, I think, which could go into effect January 10th or January 19th. And the hearing is on January 10th. Right. But they're saying the impact it will have on these individuals, and they're trying to share individual stories about how TikTok has changed the lives of people here in America. Do you think that campaign will work?
I think there's a strong economic argument, particularly in the First Amendment space, when we consider how individuals without education of the formal nature are able to capitalize on these social media to bring their talents and trades to the forefront and monetize this platform, also share information in a way where somebody doesn't have to pay $20,000 or $40,000 for a fancy university degree to learn a skill or trade, or just entertain themselves with new dances. So I think that's a strong capitalist argument that the Supreme Court will hear very sort of pleasingly and receptively.
Don't go anywhere. We'll continue this discussion after the break. And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. January 10th is the day the Supreme Court will hear arguments on the potential TikTok ban. As of right now, that would kick in on January 19th. We get back to our guest on this. From your perspective on the outside looking in, has there been more positives than negatives so far with TikTok?
Well, from a socialist concern of Chinese ownership, I think there are dangers as far as how misinformation is spread across Meta, X, or any of these other platforms, and similarly with TikTok. I also think it's addictive, and that certain restrictions on the ages of access that we've seen in other countries have a lot of value. And this is, verified in a lot of the psychological and physiological environments of health. From a legal standpoint, the First Amendment's pretty clear about rights to association, press, and other areas of assembly. And this is an area where people can assemble, share ideas, share information outside of some government-sanctioned environment. So I think there's a lot of positive, and the dangers could be mitigated very easily with small restrictions, not necessarily with an outright ban on the platform.
Give me some examples of how you would make changes to TikTok in order to make it safer for Americans if it were to continue here.
Well, one aspect is to ensure that there are certain certifications by officers and agents of TikTok to ascribe to U.S. constitutional principles. That is, if you agree to operate in the United States, you will ensure that there is no foreign or government influence over the platform's behaviors, restrictions, or censorship. Additionally, making sure, just like we might with gambling or ordering alcohol online, that there are certain age restrictions. So limiting the sort of influence of TikTok on those people who are at their most malleable stages under age 13 or so. And additionally, what we would want to see is more public disclosures and potentially some sort of screening. I'm not saying something like what we do with the Iranian nuclear facilities, but something where we allow U.S. government agencies, the FCC, or some other agency to embed at certain points, like we do with airplane manufacturers and other public safety interests, to make sure that what they're doing is legitimate, transparent, and not designed to indoctrinate us or provide false information on behalf of a foreign government.
All right. And then there's the other option. They could just sell TikTok to an American business owner, or company, or entity.
Well, Elon Musk may say, "Hey, I'm here. I got X. I'll take you too."
I'm sure he would. Dr. Dietrich von Bietenfeld from Houston Community College, thank you for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored. We appreciate your time and hope you have a Merry Christmas, sir.